Hey, hello, hi. Welcome to and or back to the EquiTheory podcast. I am your host, Jill Treese. We are back, baby, with the continuation of my conversation with Adele Shaw of the Willing Equine from last week's episode. If you haven't listened to part one, you probably should. And if you looked at the title and you saw part two and you're like, I'm going to listen to this anyway, it's not going to make any sense because we refer back a lot. So make sure you listen to both if you want, Or you can just be confused or kind of know what's going on. But I do recommend listening to them chronologically, these two episodes, but none of the others. You can listen out of order if you want. Anyway, yeah, it's really cool. I enjoy the conversation. It's very good. It's a good conversation. And I think we touched on a lot of really great topics, seriously. We went all over the map, and I hope it's a relatable conversation and it's fair and that you guys either learned something or just felt seen, heard, or gave you some new ideas on communicating and working with people as well as working with the horses. Because I think sometimes we get really wrapped up in how we treat the horses and the training there and forget how that might apply with human learners and how to interact with them, even if they're not a client. Just applying the same rules and principles of the least intrusive, minimally aversive LIMA hierarchy that we reference so many times that I just realized that neither of us explained it. It's LIMA, LIMA hierarchy, least intrusive, minimally aversive. There's a really great graphic. You can Google it. You'll find it immediately. And I'll probably link it in the show notes on my website, so you can look at it there if you need. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I have recorded 2 outros and 2 intros for this episode, so I'm a little bit lost on what I've already said and what I haven't said, and I'm a little bit brain fried because I feel like I've been recording for 4 hours. So am so enjoying it though. It's a good tired feeling. I feel like I'm back podcasting, especially having done my first interview back, not really interview, but conversation with another person. And I got new equipment, bro. I didn't say that in the last episode, but I had to go out and buy a cable so I could plug my phone into my audio interface. I did not figure out how to have her hear me through my mic, but that is a problem for another day. Anyway, I hope the audio quality is better than in the past when I've just set my phone near my mic. Maybe not. I don't know. But I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. There will be a ton of links in the description for you guys to check out regarding all of Adele's work and everything that she's doing, as well as my stuff and whatever you need to know. Okay? So check it out. Enjoy. And I hope you guys are having a good day. Okay? Let's get into it. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the EquiTheory Patreon. By becoming a patron at one of the 3 tiers, you automatically become an EquiTheorist. As one holding this holy title, you may simply monetarily support all things EquiTheory content creation, as every little bit counts and it goes a long way toward making the show better and science-based training and management education more accessible. Or, alternatively, you have my permission to reap the sweet benefits to which you now have access. Those decadent benefits include supporting the show, Jill and the Horses. That's me, it's third person, first and foremost, of course. But also discounts in the EquiTheory store, Patreon exclusive swag, which is a fun word that they use, which is a mug and a sticker, but your questions dubbed as those with the highest priority for podcastual response, and access to the members-only Discord server where you'll be able to join a community of like-minded equestrians, vote on topics for upcoming episodes, share your triumphs, get advice when you get stuck, and access to all of the beautiful sciencey minds of other trainers. Best of all, you get to join in live monthly meetings. During these meetings, you can ask as many of your training and behavior questions as your heart desires, plus get access to custom curated resources and meet fellow like-minded equestrians who are more than happy to talk horses for hours on end. Seriously. They go for 4 hours. It's absurd. But beyond all of that, you also now have access to my eternal gratitude. And if you aren't into the whole monthly subscription thing, you can choose to opt for the discounted annual subscription, or you can join for a month, cancel after. You'll have lifetime access to the Discord server at the EquiTheorist Light tier, or you can just keep listening to the podcast. I sincerely appreciate it. I make a little bit of coin that way, so just keep doing it, okay? That works for me. Thanks. But for serious, if you're interested in joining, you can just click on the link down in the description or go to patreon.com and type in EquiTheory and become a member today. We had discussed potentially pitching the bad shaping plan. So do you want to do that maybe?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to run with that, because I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. So I'll let you start with it and I'll pick up.
Well, Adele, I emailed it to you.
I know, I have it right in front of my face, but
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how you want to talk about it.
God only knows. We're going to try though. Okay. So the shaping plan. Right. The very simplified one that I have in front of me goes over the ABCs of training, that your antecedent, behavior, consequence. Antecedent being what happens before training, behavior being what the animal does, and the consequence being your reinforcement, punishment, operandy part.
Yes.
So antecedent being how you set it up, what the environment's like, the cue
and also, we could even look at distant antecedents as far as like, how's the person feeling that day? You know, what environment are we already in? Are we looking at like, it's already a hostile environment? Well, that's you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to that.
Is it 1,000,000 degrees outside and making people angrier?
Cranky.
Yeah. And one thing that I have listed here also under the antecedent category is the positive reinforcement trainers and the way that they come across online, because this whole thing's kind of about sharing and teaching positive reinforcement online, just to make it a little bit more specific, because both of us, I mean, like if we're working with people in person, I mean, outside like kind of the professionals that you already work with, who are not voluntarily willing to go through your woo-woo indoctrination, but the people that are voluntarily working with you have probably already drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But online is where you're kind of on that open frontier. So that's where I thought we might focus with the
wild, wild west.
Yes, with so that being our setup of the positive reinforcement trainers, how they interact, as well as the consideration of the audience goals. So as a positive reinforcement trainer and somebody that wants to, at the very least, my goal is to create intrigue and to allow people that are like me, that grew up training in a way that didn't feel super right to them and not knowing any other way how to work with their horses, to at least have another option on the table, that if they so choose to work with horses in this way, that it's there, and you know, you can choose that, and you can choose to work with your horse in that way. And then, but also having to consider the audience's goals, because a lot of times, you know, it's like the concern that people shared with me was that, oh, I won't be able to ride, I'm not going to be able to compete, it's all or nothing, I have to do positive reinforcement or not, which we already discussed. No baby out with the bathwater, keep that baby in that bathwater. But don't drown it, don't stay traditional.
No flooding.
What a pun, Adele. But also that it takes too long to learn or to teach. And, you know, I'm going to be honest, I had a train of thought, and then you discussed flooding babies, and
I'm sorry.
I was on such a roll. Yeah, so I'm gonna have you take it away, because my train of thought hit a brick wall.
Okay, so man, that's a lot. I'm trying to like gather my thoughts here, because you just like, here, all of this. Yeah, there's so many different aspects to it.
Welcome to the podcast. It's all over the place with a lot. Sometimes it's like really fast, like 30 seconds of good information, and then like 15 of just nonsense. It's hard to keep the brain engaged there.
No, that's okay. So,
oh, I did remember what I was going to say. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead then. Go.
I was going to say, it's actually a compliment to you, so I'm glad that you allowed me. In the last episode that you just had, what was it called?
I think it was ethical business practices.
Yes.
Horse practices. Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about competition, and I thought you made a really interesting point about that. And I had written this outline before I listened to that episode, but you made a good point that like a lot of times competition isn't something that like kids really care about in the beginning. Like and if they do care about it, it's because generally their friends are competing or they see other people doing it and they want that cool factor. But if perhaps that were removed and we lived in a vacuum, I don't think that is like the end all be all. It's typically parents or that societal expectation goal post moving situation that creates that like, oh, I need to be competing. Whereas most kids, I mean, at least me before I knew about competition, were very happy to go to the barn and ride around bareback and brush their horse and not do a whole lot else other than just like look at them and admire how awesome and soft they are. Like,
and do you have another hour for your podcast? Because like that is a huge, because my brain just went to like, okay, what's reinforcing about competitions? Let's break it down.
Oh God.
to me, like it was reinforcing because I saw my friends going and we had community while we were there. I mean, oh my gosh, this place that I went had the worst, but also the best grilled cheese sandwiches, and I don't know why.
Chicken on a stick for me.
Yes, exactly. And so every time we went to the horse show, I had my grilled cheese, and we all had this time where we'd sit around and eat our disgusting but amazing grilled cheeses.
Get Fridays off of school.
My trainers were always proud of me when I got the blue ribbon kind of thing.
Even if you did bad, it was like the first time they were nice, maybe.
No, mine were mean, but that's okay. But my mom would take off of work or whatever she was doing and come with me, so I always had parent time then. And so there's so many aspects that are reinforcing about competitions. I don't know that it's actually about the blue ribbon, like you know what I mean. And so there's so much that we could be when it comes to competitions, I'm not against them. I love competitions probably for those aspects and those good memories and all that. And I do like the ability to like check my training and kind of have that running baseline that I'm working, to, whatever. But I can recreate that in a different way, with a different type of competition. And I talked about that in the episode.
Here's the thing. You just made this click in my brain for some reason. I've never thought about this way before. In undergrad, I majored in psychology and I took a course on motivation and read this book by Daniel Pink called Drive.
Yep.
And super good book about motivation. So much so that after I returned it to my school, I bought it because I was like, awesome. I want this book. And he talked about the problems you encounter shifting motivation from intrinsic to extrinsic. So while you're talking about like what the blue ribbon's not super reinforcing, and I'm going to be honest, I was thinking about something else. I've been staring at trees for a really long time, so sometimes I'm listening, sometimes I'm not. But like riding and competing, because most people, at least as an eventer, most people don't go to a show to start. They go school cross country. They spend time doing dressage at home and show jumping in the arena at home. And then when you go to a competition, then you have validation and others' eyes on you that you're seeking that approval and validation from, getting the judges, the praise, your friends, your trainer, your coach, the ribbon, your place, your optimum time. All of that is now the external validation for what you're doing, where before you were doing it because you enjoyed the sport and you had fun just doing the activity. It was intrinsically motivating. And then it becomes about all this other stuff. So for me, what's funny is when I switched positive reinforcement and stopped competing, I really don't have a whole lot of desire to compete, but I also don't really have a whole lot of desire to like spend a bunch of time riding or like jumping or doing any of those things, because when it shifts from doing it for the sake of doing it to doing it in order to obtain something, it's almost like a poison cue. Maybe I'm being liberal with that word, but like, or that phrase, but like it takes away how it works. Like the example used in the book was that they brought kids into a room and had them color, and these kids are like coloring. And then the next time they bring them into the room and have them color, they pay them for coloring. And then the next time they bring the kids in the room, they pay them for coloring. The next time they bring the kids into the room, they're like, okay, you can color, but we're not going to pay you. The kids don't color. Because now the activity has shifted to extrinsically motivating, and they will no longer do the thing that they used to enjoy doing without that external compensation for it. So
I wonder too, though, and I've watched his TED Talks. I've not read the book though, so I'll be clear about that. And this is an area that I don't like
I don't think I've watched a
specialize.
TED Talk, so go off, heads together.
But I'm wondering too if it's not so much about external versus, or sorry, yeah, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, but also is shift in reinforcer. Is it
Right.
hard potentially to, like going back to your riding example and the competitions and all that, like before you used to ride because you loved riding and you loved horses, then you enter the competitions and now it's all about getting to the competition, and now we're trying to shift it back to riding just for the fun of it, being around horses just for the fun of it. It's a little bit more intrinsically reinforcing potentially, or it's a different type of reinforcer that doesn't have like such a definitive like blue ribbon stamp on the forehead. Like there's a
Right.
little bit more ambiguous reinforcer that's happening over time, and it's
Yeah.
hard to shift. And I've definitely experienced that myself. It took time
I
to
wonder,
shift my reinforcer.
yeah, I wonder if that's also like somewhat relevant to, like, that made me think of, like in other parts of the world, their food isn't as sugary or doesn't have as many,
Mm,
like, for lack of a better word, addictive properties
yeah.
as we do here in America. So like for me, I'm a major sugar addict. Like I have a problem, like can't eat a meal without having a sweet tooth. That's like almost insatiable on the backside. And like, so I wonder, maybe it's, I don't know, I'm off on a tangent that I haven't explored, but mentally that like once that reinforcer almost changes or becomes like, I don't know, like it's so high value, but I don't even know that a ribbon would be high value. But to keep my one train of thought here, like that initially, like a strawberry would satiate that sweet tooth, but then now it needs to be 17 chocolate chip cookies. So, like, I
Your
wonder,
taste buds have changed
yeah,
basically. Yeah, you're like looking for more, like more. Yeah.
you need a
Well, it makes
stronger hit, so to say.
me.
I was trying not to use like like addiction reference,
Well,
but
potentially. I mean, I can see that. I'm also wondering too, though, if it's perceived value of the
mm-hmm.
reinforcer too when it comes to like going back to what we were talking about with the writing, because this comes like this piece of paper I'm looking at in front of my face, about the shaping plan and all that. You have there with the audience's goals, or most, like a lot of equestrians goals is, some of their doubts that they have is they can't ride and compete, or it's all or nothing, or it takes too long. Okay, what do all three of those things tell us? They tell us that the reinforcer is getting to ride and compete, and that it looks like they're either not going to be able to do it, they're not going to be able to access their reinforcer, or it's going to take too long to now get their reinforcer again. So it looks like withholding, right? We're withholding that
Mm-hmm.
reinforcer
It's
from them,
withdrawal.
or yeah, and there's no tangible, clear, like obvious way that they're going to be able to access their reinforcer again. If I were
On the
working with
surface, I would
yes,
say. Once
yes,
you
yeah,
start it.
initially. Yes, initially they're looking at a brick wall going like, well, shoot, now I can't get over to the other
Mm-hmm.
side to get what I want. If I were looking at this, from a shaping plan perspective, when working with a horse, if I told this horse, here's your food, here's your food, here's your food, now there's a, you know, now it's going to be really hard because you don't know how to do it, uh, to get this food over here. I'm going to see a lot of frustration, a lot of extinction behaviors, a lot potentially lashing out. Um, a lot of just different things are going to come up all of a sudden to the surface, and I may see some behavioral fallout that might be really unpleasant or dangerous or whatever. And I think this is where we get into like social media, like hostile comments and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of behavioral fallout. Yeah. So if we look at, the riding and the competing as the reinforcer, and being able to do, it could be other things too. It could be, I don't know. There's a lot of different things people could look at as reinforcing, but I think as horse people, we've been largely raised and conditioned to look at riding as like the ultimate reinforcer, especially competitions. Like if you have a competition horse, they have more points on their whatever. Anyway, they have higher value. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of value is put on competition, like just competition, competition. And we don't breed horses that haven't been competed, which is okay. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just,
No, breed
again,
more.
I'm just going to try and push that point of competition has one of the highest values in the horse world.
And
So if
why
we
is
look at,
that? Is it tertiary?
oh man, staying on track. Come on,
Yeah.
Jill. Let's do this together.
What's
Okay.
reinforcing that? Let's explore that rabbit trail.
Yeah, right. So if we keep in mind that this is like a really reinforcing aspect, and we've grown up thinking this is the most reinforcing, and if your horse isn't being ridden, it's all the terminology, it's a pasture puff, it's a lawnmower, like it's just being a pet, like it's just all these kind of sometimes really direct and also sometimes really subtle derogatory kind of references towards horses that aren't being ridden. It's really no wonder that people get really hung up on the idea that it might take them a while to get back to riding, or that maybe their horse might choose not to be ridden. That sounds like the end of the world. And trust me, I've been there.
Yeah, same. And I'm sitting here thinking like I started out this podcast like defending and like going ahead and giving disclaimers about how little I've done with Zoe because I feel guilty and bad, like I'm not being a good enough horse person because I'm not back riding her yet after her kissing spine surgery. And so I'm like, I don't, it's crazy that I do feel bad for just allowing her to be a horse when she looks and like appears healthier than she's been in a very long time, having just been turned out for like 2 years. And she doesn't seem particularly interested in doing a whole lot of anything. I mean, I'm sure she'd be down for clicker training if it were on the table. But like, even then, it's like, she's like, okay, 20, 30 minutes. That's cool. But I also could kind of take it or leave it. And
and I think every horse is a little bit different too. And, I have 7 personal horses, and I've got
that's a lot.
expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
A couple of them are ridden, meaning they're learning ridden behaviors, and we ride sometimes and we don't ride other times. And, I love it. I love spending that time with them, but it's also not the basis for our relationship. And then I have a lot of my other horses are not ridden, and that's okay. Again, it is not the basis for my relationship with them. And that has come from switching from, and this is just kind of my analysis of it, I have switched my reinforcer about being around horses and being with horses and having horses from I need to ride, that's my reinforcer, or I need to compete. So initially it was kind of this transition. It did like in phases. I went from, okay, I can give up competitions, but I still need to ride.
Right.
Okay. And then it went from, and this was the hardest one, I may not be able to ride this horse. And is that going to be okay with me? Is something else going to be reinforcing about being around horses? And so basically rediscovering that initial joy and passion for loving horses as horses and appreciating them and not needing to take something or have something from them. They don't owe me anything. And this is a whole nother topic.
No, I mean, it sounds like what happens when you blow out your dopaminergic, serotonergic systems and you are so used to getting that, like, I don't know, mega hit of nicotine. Like I've talked about that. I had a minor vape addiction at one point, and you get to a point where you need more of it, or you don't get that same feeling. And with competing and being a competitive horse rider, now you're at a pretty high dose. I'm not equating them in terms of it being as harmful as addiction, though arguably maybe for the
we
horse.
do some pretty sketchy stuff.
Yeah. But in just to keep the metaphor a little cleaner, please don't read between the lines. It's going back to what was initially reinforcing for you. I was perfectly fine living my life without nicotine. Until I started doing little baby nicotine, and then more and more and more and more, until I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to breathe in a couple of years. So maybe I should not do that, and stopped. And then it was quite a while of like getting my brain and body reset and back to like, okay, we are good and don't need that thing. And I was perfectly happy and content before, and could even be happier now, having a renewed appreciation for what it's like to breathe and not get winded all the time for walking. But the same, I think, might apply to being competitive with horses, that maybe you can go back to where you started with a newfound appreciation and then take it in a different direction. That you can go back to that simplicity and then build from there while having that appreciation. And I don't think it necessarily means that you never have to compete again. I think in the current climate of the show world, yes. But you can still ride and you can do the competition things. And I know like Miss Steph K Equestrian has got the Tex competition and that is ramping up there. And so there's...
Yeah. And there's some other trainers too. I know for it's just right now exclusive to my academy members, but I run twice a year shows, and we've also got horse agility. That's really friendly to what we're doing. There's also potentially some liberty competitions. Like there are other types that are growing. They're not 100% there yet, but I agree with you. I don't think it totally means you need to like scratch competitions. And riding is absolutely possible with positive reinforcement. What I tell people, because I ride all the time now, maybe not as much as like when you think professional trainer, you're probably thinking like I'm clocking like 7 hours a day in the saddle. It's not like that, because I do a lot of behavior consulting and a lot of stuff on the ground, cooperative care stuff, all of that. But I am riding, and we thoroughly enjoy that. I'm working on advanced riding behaviors under saddle and on the ground as far as like in hand stuff. But again, that's not the primary basis for our relationship. If it got taken away tomorrow, I mean, it would be sad, but it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to shrivel up and die. But
yeah,
I was going somewhere with that and my brain just went, woohoo.
Mine did too. It's a strong breeze from Texas.
What I was going to say is that what I tell people is, a lot of times what they're seeing when they all of a sudden see people stop riding, so they switch to clicker training and all of a sudden the riding stops, is because one of the primary reasons people consider switching over to clicker training and positive reinforcement is because they're dealing with a lot, right? Their horses are either like my mare Tiger, who, she was blowing up under saddle, super dangerous, and nothing was working. And so I had to start over from scratch. And I did ride a little bit, but eventually I had to stop and restart from the beginning.
Yeah, I believe your answer to what put you onto positive reinforcement was desperation.
Yes, desperation.
And ditto.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are transitioning because of desperation. And so what that means is their horses are likely packing around either a lot of physical problems or a lot of behavioral trauma. And
or both.
Or both. And usually it's both. And so they have to start over, not completely over all the time, but it takes a long time, right? It's not going to be this like, we took a break for a couple of weeks and we're back to our competitions. Like, no, it's looking like years.
And a lot of it can be management issues too. So sometimes you got to wait on like if they're having chronic hoof problems, the diet change to cycle through, or a couple massage therapy / chiropractor body work appointments, things like that. Like, and also a lot of what happens with positive reinforcement when you start, you're like, oh wait, this is like really, really fun. And I'm having accidentally more fun doing this than I was fighting with my horse who's was constantly trying to break my jaw by hitting me in the face with their neck, and also digging spurs into their side, or hitting them with whips, or just cranking their faces down, or just like the general attitudes that you have sometimes when, and it's not that all traditional riding is bad or puts you in this headspace or it's just this terrible thing. But I do think that there's something to be said about the mindset that you have when you are riding traditionally. And it's not something that you can really help, because you have to inherently be looking for what is going wrong and correcting it, rather than in positive reinforcement. You can approach it that way, but you are also like really looking for what can I reinforce, what is right, without holding an aversive or withholding something. I mean, I guess you are withholding the food reinforcer, but like,
if you're doing it right, you shouldn't be really, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And so especially in the beginning, there's a lot of that.
Well, to add to that too is, I want to say, and this is just to kind of put it out there, with a young horse without baggage, and maybe it's an older horse without a lot of baggage, meaning physical trauma, behavioral trauma, the process to starting a horse under saddle, if you're an experienced clicker trainer, is relatively straightforward and doesn't take a long time. It's a couple of months to get those first rides under saddle with some basic under saddle cues and all of that. And then it goes from there. And what's really cool about it too is if you've done your homework right and you've done the training right from the ground, once you get in the saddle, it's like easy breezy, like no problems. I can't even tell you how much easier it is to start horses this way than how it was before.
I think that is also a problem that we encounter on the better shaping plan of approaching sharing and teaching about positive reinforcement online, is that you're like, okay, great, that works for your super calm baby horse. That does not work for my like pure child of chaos over here that breaks fences every 30 seconds. Like that wouldn't work for my horse. And like that's kind of the problem that we encounter. And I know that this is on the flip side for some of the more soft negative reinforcement trainers. This is something that I hear Warwick talk about on his podcast, that it's like people don't believe me that the horse is having problems and is like seriously a danger to society, because when I work with it, I cover my bases and then we don't have problems. That doesn't come up. And it just kind of takes care of itself because we've addressed and shown the horse the way all the way along.
And good training's boring and it doesn't look crazy. And I actually have a horse I'm working with right now. I'll give you background for super fast, like 2 sentences. I got called in because she was literally like attacking people, not like she was attacking people. We would have a barrier between us and she would come at me through the fence trying to take the fence down. Like,
did you film this?
No.
Film it.
Oh my gosh. No, this was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
She's just like a normal horse, and I never triggered that. I went back to where it wasn't triggered. I built it up. I showed her what I needed her to do instead. I put everything on start buttons and stop buttons. Like, it doesn't look exciting. Like, I actually posted a video of her not too long ago talking about this, and I can't tell you how many comments I got. Like, that's not a dangerous horse. What are you talking about? I'm like, of course she doesn't look dangerous because I'm doing my job
You
right.
think that horse is dangerous? God, what a weenie. These positive reinforcement people are such weenies.
I'm so mad I didn't get a before video.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the part about the better shaping plan, is you have to maybe sometimes be like, hey, owner, can you show me what's going on? And can I
didn't want to put her through it.
I know, that's the problem with being ethical, is you're like, no, wait, I don't actually want you to trigger the bad behavior first.
Chill. Why do we gotta have be trying to be ethical? Okay?
I don't know, it's boring. But
okay, wait, let's go back to the shaping plan.
Yeah, I was also just about to redirect. God.
I hope you listeners are appreciating this. We're getting tired and loosey-goosey now.
That was 40 minutes ago. We started the shaping plan and have not even broached a... Oops.
Okay, so talking about setting up the antecedents and, creating shaping plans for effectively helping people understand what we're doing and helping build that curiosity and hopefully get them to take those first steps into exploring positive reinforcement. That would be the ideal consequence, right? The outcome. So antecedent, behavior, consequence, ABC. So the antecedent being, like you said, the arrangement, how it's all set up, the behavior being the actual thing that the learner does, whether it's a horse, a human, a dog, a parrot, doesn't matter. And then the consequence, which a lot of people associate that with like a negative thing, like emotionally negative, but a consequence just means outcome. It's like, 1 + 1 = 2. That's the 2 is the outcome. Okay?
And you can't say ABO. It's not as catchy as ABCs. So consequence.
ABC. Yeah. So, man, my thing just shut off on me now. I don't see the notes.
Well, we're talking about like how it goes wrong.
How it goes wrong. So when it's wrong, so when we set up the antecedents poorly, what that can look like is, like you have written down, you have like shaming and gatekeeping and guilt tripping. And I see this a lot on social media, unfortunately. And I don't think this is just isolated to the clicker training community. I see it in a lot of other communities too. I have different clients that have different professions, and it's in all of them. Like I have a client that does is a professional therapist, and all of the same stuff surprisingly shows up in that community too, and it
Yeah.
shows up in the dog training world. It shows up in pretty much everywhere.
It's a
But we,
human issue.
yeah, it's a human issue, and some of this comes from us projecting, you know, our guilt and our self-shaming, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we hate how we used to do things, and now we're we're just like really negative on ourselves and how we used to do things, and now we're also being negative and
Yeah.
shaming people that are doing things the way we used to do it. It's almost
And
like we're treating them like,
our past selves.
yes,
Yeah.
and
And
oh,
getting evangelical about it, like you said earlier, where
yeah,
you're just like, okay, well, now I've seen the light and I have to bring everyone over to it. And if you don't want to join, you're just a lost lamb.
yeah, you need to be saved.
Right. And
Yeah,
no.
that self-righteous kind of
Yes.
patronizing culture. And it's it's not an ideal learning environment, right? So how are you going to expect people to even consider change and even consider learning something new when we're setting up the classroom
Mm-hmm.
to be a terrible learning environment? Oh, we've got like it's little Johnny sitting in a chair right there with everybody around him is pointing at him and being like, "No, Johnny, that's terrible, and how dare you get the wrong answer?" And just like on and on and
Yeah.
on. And also like Johnny must learn algebra on his first day at school. Like, of course, nobody wants to learn
Right.
or try because the culture, the setup is so poor
Right.
for that learning, right? And we're not going to get the outcome we want, which is moves into that next section of the behavior, right? So we got the antecedent, which is that poor classroom, that terrible setup classroom. And we've got the behavior, which is that poor Johnny shuts down, he starts crying, or he gets angry and starts lashing out. And he's like, I can't do this, and storming out of the room. And we see
Mm-hmm.
that a lot in response to the poorly set up antecedents. Actually, yeah, so the storming out would be all that. And then the final consequence would be that then this, I mean, I'm kind of open to what that might be, but it might be that they turn around and start talking poorly about
Mm-hmm.
clicker training and positive reinforcement. They start talking about how it's terrible training and the people in the community are terrible. And so they never want to try it. And so that's also another part of that consequence, right? That they never come
Right.
back to the classroom.
I think it's very comparable to why vegans get a bad rap.
Mm-hmm.
I have known many vegans in my life, and you will not see them harassing people on social media because they are doing it because they believe it's right and they're confident in that, and they don't need to like preach to other people about it. And but a lot of people hate vegans because of the loud minority on social media that are telling you that you are like the antichrist for eating meat or having leather boots. And there are some clicker trainers that are like that. They are very few and far between, at least in the horse community, because we're all like, I think we've all started to learn, like, you better be nice to people or you're going to get, like, really exiled. And also, I think it took, for at least me, it took a hot second for me to realize that was super against my values as a
Yeah.
LIMA clicker trainer, that I'm like, I am not treating people the way that I want to treat the animals that I'm advocating for, and that's super
Mm-hmm.
not fair. And I mean, why would they want to, like, your audience? Why would your audience want to even explore clicker training or consider it or give it a shot or ask you a question about it if they're having all of this emotional mental fallout, which goes back to the what I have written in the B category for the behavior, is that when you do all of that shaming and guilt tripping and you gatekeep information from people that are trying to learn, and you're self-righteous and you're like, just like, well, if you're not doing it this way, you're wrong. And also, you're abusing your horse. So you're kind of a terrible person. You should probably just sell your horse. Um, and like, what else are they going to do? And the people that are open to it might have a more vulnerable response, which is the like being like, I'm afraid to take that step because I'm afraid to fail. I'm overwhelmed and I'm confused. All of a sudden I've been abusing my horse for the past 10 years when I didn't think I was. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to, what was right. That's just how you train horses. And then like all of that guilt and shame when I was talking about the two paths an hour and a half ago, I think, that like you can choose to take. And so, I mean, it becomes this whole emotional nastiness mess. At least it did for me. And it all happened very quickly. Like when people would comment that on my Instagram or my YouTube, I'd be like, ew, go away, block, like, leave me alone. Like, or I would be like, you tree hugger, you like sensitive, a tree hugger is really the best word. Like that is just a treat lady. You just leave me alone. Go feed your horses treats. I'm going to do the real people business. Okay. I'm going to do the real horse person stuff. And, I think when you just come at it like that, instead of, I really don't even know that like reaching out is always the best approach. Occasionally, if I see somebody in a group that's like, maybe like I'm new to horses and I'm struggling with this, I'll be like, hey, you might check out positive reinforcement. That might help you. Or like somebody that's like, my horse is struggling with the trailer and I'm at a loss. I don't know what else to do. I've tried this method. I've tried this, and no amount of beating will get my horse into the trailer. What do I do? I'll be like, you might explore positive reinforcement. I have some links on my website if you want to check them out. Take it or leave it. And then I don't look at it ever again. And I mean, like.
And I think that's probably like if I were to say, how should you reach out? Because I'm not saying that we should all be silent and like quiet and like never talk about what we do. Because then, we have this opposite side of things where when we're first starting to explore or even later on, we become really self-conscious about what we're doing. And it seems like there's two sides of it. There's the people that are kind of screaming it from the rooftops and yelling at everybody, and then we have the people who are just like afraid to say anything and are just like, leave me alone, I'm doing my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay to be a voice on social media, and it's okay to share. Well, one, I think if you're going to share what you're doing, and we'll just kind of put this in here as the section of the podcast where we talk about what would be a good thing to do on social media, which would be sharing what you're doing. Be aware though of your expertise level. This is something that I just encourage people to be careful trying to teach other people when they don't have the expertise level to be able to do that in a safe, effective way.
It's
So I'm
very,
not.
very hard not to.
Yes.
Because like I said, this is the catalyst for the podcast, and I don't know if they'd want me to mention it, but somebody that I'm friends with, I'm on TikTok. I saw them posting a lot of great content about, just educating people about positive reinforcement. But then I slowly started seeing it like being videos responding to negative comments, and then there was a lot of them, and then it started being more antagonistic. And then one day, which I'm so like proud of them for this video, they were like, I realized that I actually don't have to be the one that's like carrying positive reinforcement on my back, and I don't have to fight everyone about it. And if like I want to post for me and my people that care about this, but I'm not going to like engage with the negativity, even though it gets views and you accidentally get positive reinforcement from that. Like it's not my job to teach everyone, and I'm not that far along, and I'm starting to get to a level where I feel uncomfortable where people are asking me questions I don't have the answer to. And I have also been there, and it's very daunting when you're like, oh my God, because I started this podcast wanting to just like help make it more accessible for people. And then all of a sudden people were like, okay, well, my horse does this. What do I do? And I was like, well, I have some ideas. And then it just kept going, which honestly was good practice for me, but also probably in the beginning, not super ethical of me, even though I was doing it well-intentioned, that probably shouldn't be giving advice before I'm fully confident on what I'm saying and how I might approach the situation.
I think that's tricky because if you wait until you're confident in sharing the information,
right.
And you have that expertise level, oftentimes what happens is that you start to have that expertise level, but then you lack the confidence. And so then it kind of flip-flops, and it's unfortunate. So I don't think it's a problem to offer people, like if they specifically come to you asking for ideas or help, that you have been primed and placed in a spot where this person is like looking for help and is asking for it, and it's not going to be confrontational. They truly want your advice. I would offer some suggestions, and then I might also add here's some more information on this, and also I might reach out to these professionals just because I'm not a professional and these are just my ideas. And that just primes them also understanding that the person that they're reaching out to for help does have limited experience, but is willing to be there for them and be a support system for them. I think that's fantastic, especially because a lot of times the professionals, the people that have been doing this for a long time, are not quite as accessible. Unfortunately, as much as I would love to be accessible to everybody, I can't.
We heard the list. You're doing a lot.
So I think it's really good. And this goes back to that small community, right? Building your little group of people that can support each other. I think that's okay. I think that's healthy. And actually, there's some research behind it that says that sometimes the best person to learn from is the person that's one level above you. So,
yeah, they just figured out how to get to the next level. Like,
yeah,
so, and
more
it's
accessible.
Sometimes for us, it's more far removed. Like, I'll catch myself being like, oh yeah, that needs to be put on stimulus control.
Yeah.
Not realizing that I probably need to explain what stimulus control is and then having to back up. And I think that's what you're saying, to get to the better shaping plan, that to be accessible, but also to be honest about what you know, but still accessible enough that people can come to you if they have a question. And, sometimes it's less intimidating to ask somebody, if we're talking on social media, that has lower numbers than somebody that has a bigger account. And you're also probably more likely to get a response. And so you can start there and build and learn more and grow. And then you're setting up this community where, like, what was so cool about me reaching out to you and everyone in our WhatsApp group was, like, I suddenly had a bunch of trainers at my fingertips of varying different expertise levels that were all very, very willing to take a whole lot of time out of their day to explain things to me. And I was willing to do the same whenever I had something to offer. And that was not something that I had experienced in traditional training. It was all very like, hush, hush, you better know it. And if you don't, you're shamed for it. Like, I remember getting embarrassed as hell at like 11 for not being able to explain to Jim Wofford what a half halt was. And because I didn't know. I didn't know
what a half halt was at 11.
I know. I just, when my trainer said half halt, I just kind of like halfway asked for a halt, but I didn't know how to verbalize that at 11.
You're like, half halt?
Right.
Okay.
Like, you like go to halt, but then don't. And he was like, no, stupid, wrong. And so, I mean, like, I think I don't know. And maybe it's just my cultural pocket that in the traditional world, like, I could always ask my trainer something, but there was a little level of like, you should already know that.
Yes.
And I mean,
me too.
I think that exists in the positive reinforcement world too, to some degree. But at the same time, like, we were all very happy to help each other learn and explain things. And I mean, I started a whole damn podcast because I was like, more people need to know about this. And it's kind of hard to find solid information on it. So I'm also going to make a website and curate a ton of freaking information about it. And like, I think once you get in that, you're like, yeah, I want to do more. I want to help educate and share, because you fall in love with that teaching aspect of it. And I am on a ramble. I'm catching myself.
Yeah, no, you're good. And I think, and there's that fine line, right? There's the fine line between being available and open to answering questions and sharing what you do with confidence without overstepping your experience level, right? So there's that kind of side of things, which is fantastic, beautiful, great. And then there's the easy step over to starting to shame people and gatekeep and start coming off as a little bit self-righteous and like all that. And I see this a lot, particularly on TikTok is where I'm seeing this the most, but I do see it on other platforms too, where people are duetting other people's videos and whatever, and calling out all the things that are bad. And I know the intention there is to educate, but unfortunately, if the person didn't ask to be educated, they are not open to learning, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody else sees, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, what they're going to see is you, the person doing the duetting and all that, just calling somebody else out and being really negative and using a lot of basically positive punishments. And it doesn't, like you said, it's not meeting the same standards that we are working to meet when we're training our horses.
But Adele,
LIMA,
that's not good content to be nice to people.
Come on. Oh my gosh, I can't. tell you how infuriating that is, that good training doesn't get good views,
I
and
know.
also nice people being nice doesn't get good views, and
Well,
that
and my
is
pictures are so boring now. I'm on the ground with a horse instead of like jumping 4 feet. I'm like, how do I make interesting content? And you know what is really interesting? The difference, because this is something that I noticed on Twitter. Like a couple of years ago, I couldn't be on Twitter because I was doing positive reinforcement, and Twitter hated that and thought it was ridiculous. But now it's shifted to where if you don't do positive reinforcement on Twitter, you're the idiot, which is so wild to me because it's literally been like 2 or 3 years. Like it has not been long.
I
And
know.
and Instagram is kind of the same, but TikTok is even more so
That's
the
my
same
theory
but different
on
also.
I think what happened was is that we kind of pushed out all of the other training on Instagram. We pushed it all out with our clicker training stuff.
Yeah.
And Liberty, that was another big one, all the Liberty
Mm.
hashtags and all that. And now it's all gone to TikTok. And I honestly,
Yeah.
I can't scroll TikTok for my mental health. It's quite
Well,
terrifying.
the trick to TikTok is just don't be on horse TikTok. It's the
Yes.
worst. I got on it for like a hot second, and I every time I saw a horse on my TikTok, I scrolled so fast. I was like, I don't want to be a part of
Yes.
this. I give props to the troopers that are out there commenting and watching them. I mean, you're
But
adding engagement,
also,
but
yeah,
okay.
that's part of the problem too is, okay, so you comment on it and say this or that, but you just fed the algorithm. If it's and then you watch the video and you just fed the algorithm, you share the video, you just fed the algorithm. Like we're just feeding this shock
Right.
value content. What I try and do, and I don't know that it's working, but I want to feel like it is, so I'm trying, is I just go to the people that I follow, and I will, every, week or so or whatever it is, just kind of go scroll through the recent stuff and like and comment on it. So I'm trying to promote the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I want to see more of. And my, they changed, I think they just changed it, but it's like the For You page or whatever. It's all non-horse stuff. Like I have like organic farming on there and
Oh yeah,
like all
mine's like
kinds of stuff.
DIY crafts and like
Yes.
a whole lot of cat videos, like an absurd amount of cat. I am literally like the
TikTok
definition.
has decided you're the cat lady.
Yes, I'm a major boomer where I literally just watch cat videos on my phone all day. But like
Happy.
it's so serotonin, and
Yes.
cat TikTok is rarely bad. Every now and again, there's a cat in a bathtub that
Yeah.
can't get out, and the owner's making fun of it while it's
Oh.
screaming for its life, because it
Oh.
is too obese to jump out of the bathtub. I understand why it's kind of funny, but also it's sad, like very
This
sad.
sounds like a video you actually saw.
It is like yesterday or this morning.
Oh no.
And I didn't read the comments because I was like, I feel like a lot of people are fat shaming this cat, and I feel sorry for him, I don't know, them. And yeah, so anyway, what on earth are we supposed to be talking about?
Shipping plans. I don't
Right.
know if we followed what you wanted to talk about, but we did talk
Listen,
about some antecedents.
I told you we were probably not going to follow it or even get around to it. So I'm proud of the work that we have done.
We've done a lot of work.
We've circled back to it a couple of times, and from what I
Yes.
understand about meditation, it is not about how many times you forget that you're supposed to be doing it. It's that you remembered that you're supposed to come back to it. So,
Are you comparing recording this podcast to meditation?
and or mindfulness, yes.
Okay.
It's just like really bad ADHD training, I think, that I'm like, oh, good, I remembered, but I don't know that I'm actually reinforcing myself at all.
Or are you kind of like jokingly shaming yourself?
Don't
You're like,
call me out on my own podcast. It's
I'm
so
sorry,
rude.
I'm sorry.
But
Okay, how about this? Let's go back to the main quote. If people don't like you because of plus R or positive reinforcement, that's expected. If people don't like R plus R positive reinforcement
feel like I'm
because of
training
you,
all the things.
that's a problem. And where that was coming from, just to kind of sum up the whole thing, was that if you're going to explore this, or if you already are, or if you're way deep in, it is normal, unfortunately, for people to shame us for it and to make all the comments like, you're just doing it for the treats. Like I get those every day.
That's literally why at the beginning. You're right. Good one.
Yeah.
We are aware. Thanks.
that is normal, and that happens, and that is not because of you. You didn't cause that. It is just, it's part of cultural conditioning. It's part of a lot of other aspects. There's a lot of going into that, right, that we've talked about through this episode. But the problem arises, or the problem arises when people actually turn away from, or, just write off clicker training, positive reinforcement, whatever, because of some sort of interaction with you, and you're not helping as much as you want to be helping, or trying to help. And it's creating an unideal learning environment, and actually punishing the behavior that we're wanting to see. We're sitting here going, we want this behavior to change. We're actually punishing it, and then we're surprised,
right? And
if we don't get the outcome we want.
I do think it's a fine line, because you can't, I mean, the learner in the situation is not somebody that is in your control, in your vacuum, willingly. So I do think it's a fine line, and worth saying that, like, if people are turning away from positive reinforcement because of you, you should probably have a hot moment of reflection and self-evaluation. But it doesn't always, I mean, obviously necessarily mean that you're pushing them away.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean, and that, those little two little sentences are very condensed, and there's a lot packed into them.
I'm the queen of caveats. I'm like, but I also, and wait, yes.
There is a lot more to it, and I wouldn't, put all of that weight on yourself. The whole idea is to talk about maybe what are some things that we are doing that could potentially be turning people away, and what are some things we could be doing instead of those things to encourage more of the behavior we're looking for. But you are not that person's only interaction, and you are not always or solidly or solely responsible for the antecedents that interaction happened in. Because I can have, I've had so many conversations where I tried to come at the conversation in a very kind way. I was very open to answering questions, et cetera, et cetera. And it didn't go well. And it wasn't because of anything I did. I reflected on it. I even asked some people sometimes if I feel like maybe I wasn't sure what happened there. And they're like, no, that wasn't you. And then sometimes, very rare, but this does happen, where later on, sometimes it's a couple of years later, I will re-interact with that person again. I'll get another opportunity to interact with them, and they will be coming to me, and they will be like, that interaction we had a long time ago, I know it didn't go well. However, it really planted a seed, and I just was in a really bad place then, and I wasn't willing to do this or that, and you were really I was being confronted with a lot of doubts and whatever, all the other stuff going on was.
Sometimes they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to that, like, uh-oh, what have I done? Oh, no. Or it's 100 degrees outside, and they're more prone to being angry.
Like we all are in the South right now.
Right. I mean, I've had so many interactions like that with several different people on Instagram that, like, were all up in my DMs and, like, very angry at me for switching, or just even incorporating positive reinforcement, and like, got into so many arguments with people that I was, like, pretty close with before. And then like you said, a couple years later, then all of a sudden we're like homies again, and they've come around on it and are incorporating it or use it full time. And it's just that, like, it's not always about you, but just, I think that the point would be to create a scenario or a conversation where you can walk away confidently that was an interaction that might have at least piqued your own interest in the thing. It was non-confrontational. You were open. You were willing to hear. You were willing to explain kindly and avoid guilting and shaming people. Like, if you can check those boxes in an interaction, in most cases, I think that you're probably good, regardless of how the person reacts. I think it's just, it's really, really, really easy to fall into the shaming, attacking, defensiveness. And I mean, honestly, I would just be like, if you feel yourself getting into that or making those videos, like, reevaluate, see if you can do it differently. But if it's, like, hurting you, like that one TikToker that I was mentioning that was like, I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. Yeah. I didn't mean to do this. I just got sucked in.
Yeah.
But I do think that you could probably make duetted videos and capitalize off of somebody else's, like, click-worthy video of a horse flipping over with the saddle, and then explain, just post the video and do edit and then be like, so positive reinforcement, and just not acknowledge the video, but get your own clicks from it. I feel like maybe that's a marketing strategy, perhaps.
Maybe.
Just make the horse's suffering worth it in some way.
Oh gosh.
I don't know if that's the right approach, but regardless, to keep it positive and to make it a welcoming, good place, a good community to want to join.
I think it's, you're just kind of accepting some responsibility. Like you're acknowledging your part in it, right? It's not entirely about you. It doesn't even really have much to do with you. It just, you have some part in that, that person's kind of journey and how they're exploring things and whatever, and just kind of looking at that part of it, evaluating it. Is that an interaction that would have been valuable to you early on in your days, or would have that turned you away? All of that. For me personally, I kind of have some guidelines that I've continuing to adapt, but they have been serving me well recently, and I'll kind of share those, and you guys can adapt them how you want. But I make a purpose of not letting a conversation move into an argument type. So I will avoid and stop any conversation that is changing into an argument. So we can have a conversation, we can pass back and forth ideas, but as soon as it starts to even remotely step into an argument side of things, I'm out. And I will just say, you know what, that's okay. You do you, I do me kind of thing. Have a wonderful day. Like there's no shame in that. Like let it go. And they will respect that a whole lot more. Anybody would respect that a whole lot over continuing an argument that's not going anywhere. And the other thing I do, and one of the reasons I guess this really ties into the argument side of things, is how I tell it's turning into an argument, or even really whether it's not, is I pay attention to how I feel internally. So if I'm not coming at this conversation, or if I read that comment and instantly my blood kind of boils, or I get a little bit anxious, or I can feel my heart rate go up, or I start to shake my head, or my eyes roll, or whatever, I will either respond with a pre-made comment, like a canned comment that I have written off, like something to the effect of, please read my other comment threads and check out this resource. Like you can respond with that to a comment about how you're using treats. There's nothing wrong with that. And then if I can respond in a kinder way or whatever, or I don't feel like I'm getting worked up or anxious, I try and stay in that kind of, and this is me as a professional, teacher mode. So if this person was looking at me face to face and was asking me a question about treat training or whatever, about how many treats I'm using, can I respond to this person as I would that person facing me directly, like standing in front of me, and I was in a lesson with them and I was invested in their future? If I can't respond to them in that tone, with that mentality, with that intent, then I'm not going to respond either right then or at all, or I'll respond with one of those kind of canned comments. And those are kind of just my guidelines. That's how I approach it, and that helps me. And if I'm going to respond to other people's comments or other people's posts, I follow the same kind of rules that I apply in my academy, which is that unless they ask for help, I don't usually offer it. I might, however, if it's somebody I've been following for a while and they follow me and we're mutuals, whatever, I might say, hey, I have some ideas about this if you're interested, or I might privately DM them and be like, hey, I saw your recent video and I was curious about this or that. Like I will ask questions. I start off from a curiosity, like, hey, explain to me more about what's going on, or would you like some help? Like I
have received a few of those in my day from you being like, hey, so I saw that video.
But I don't remember sending those to you. I mean, maybe you should tell me. How did you feel about those?
I was like, uh-oh, at first.
No.
but also like, oh, thank God, I like somebody who knows what they're doing can help me. I like back in the day there was that little bit of like still from traditional training being like, oh, I should have already known, but also like to be like, okay, you initiated giving me your professional opinion. I'm okay with that. And like using your brain when I'm hung up on an issue, because a lot of times personal horses are blind spots for training for some reason.
Yeah, they can be for sure. And that's why I'm really cautious about it too, because I know it can come off as a little bit like, hey, I saw something that I want to point out, but I'm also trying to be like polite about it. So I'm very cautious with doing that. And it's with people that I know or I know would welcome my suggestions or thoughts. But I'm really predominantly, I just try and R+ the things that I want to see more of, or I like, or whatever. Like all of my students that I follow on social media, I'm always like, anytime they share videos of their training or other trainers that I follow and respect, I'm like, comment, awesome job, love this. I'm just trying to do as much of that as I can because, again, just like we talked about, the terrible training, the terrible videos, the controversial ones get the most attention. And then people who are doing it well and are doing it ethically or whatever are not getting near the attention that they deserve and need. And so it would be such a better use of our time, I think, to go out there and just like, okay, I've got 10 comments I'm going to give out today. I'm going to budget 10 comments. Where am I going to place them? I mean, those are like little clicks and cookies. I mean, that's what it is.
Well, and I think that just goes a long way towards creating that environment where it's like you see positive reinforcement trainers like commenting and being really nice, even to people that are not in the community, but that are still doing ethically kind things or considering their horse's welfare. Like, hey, I really respect you giving your horse time off when they had this injury and going above and beyond for their care. Like, that's great, and not just like, okay, maybe 90 days, like my vet told me after the kissing spine surgery, I immediately got back on. Like, it's, I don't know, just being able to be that kind force. I don't know why the whole time we've been talking about this, I'm like, do we sound like a cult? Like, like this is how you manipulate people into trying positive reinforcement. But
no,
I mean,
this is just how the brain works. And we have a negativity bias, right? People have a negativity bias and our brains hook on to the things that are bad. Like, you remembered that one cat video that you gave me an example of was a bad one, right?
Yeah, couldn't tell you a positive one.
Exactly. And so we have a negativity bias. And I think if we are just trying really hard to point out the things that we like, and I love that example of using it for people who maybe aren't even clicker training, whatever. I do that all the time. Like, I saw a video not too long ago where this mare didn't want to be, she kept moving away when she tried to get in the saddle. And so instead she switched over to just spending time with her and hanging out in the round pen. And I was like, R plus, R plus, R plus, like amazing.
Yeah, and like
and
reinforcing people for going against the grain and being like, you actually put your horse first, and that's really, really cool. And and I think that there's a lot of attempting to put the horse first and it being kind of misguided. But like, I also do think that it goes a long way. Like, when I first switched to positive reinforcement, Kathy Sierra from Intrinsin, now Panther Flows, sent me a long message on DMs, and I will never forget that message because, and I remember where I was, and I remember, and just like the conversation with you, I mean, I remember those things. They stick out so hard to me because they were so kind and so unexpected. Because like, Kathy just randomly messaged me out of nowhere and was like, hey, I know what you're doing is hard because you have a big eventing audience, but I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think it's great. And like, this is going to make things different. And I was like, what? Like, just confidence boost through the roof, and like, so needed that.
What's cool about that? I don't think I've ever shared this with you. She reached out to me too around that, like, talking about you making that switch. And so we were, I think a lot of different people were like, this is so exciting. And like, we all need to just support her.
So the WhatsApp group was just a manipulation tactic.
No, this was before WhatsApp. This was on Instagram.
Yeah.
But no, it was just other professionals, other R plus clicker trainer people. I mean, and Kathy and I don't do everything the same, but we support each other.
Right. And yeah. I mean,
we're all just banding together to be like, yes, more. Keep going, Jill. Like, awesome.
Well, and I was peripherally aware at the time that the reason that I probably got a 3-hour phone call with you when I first started asking questions about it was because if you converted me, I would be a very loud voice in the community. And I don't know if that was your intention or not, but I did think about that. And not that I'm like self-important, but that number did exist at one point. Now it's slowly falling because I don't jump anymore, as often. But, yeah, I mean, like, I do think it's really cool. I don't know. I saw a bigger Instagram account at one point posting about maybe trying positive reinforcement with a horse that they were not like super sure about riding because it was having some issues going under saddle and being competitive. And a lot of the comments were like, oh my God, yes, do that, do this. And like
cool.
tagging me and being like, check out Jill stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I've got like 3 people that like ride for me hard on Twitter. Like anytime somebody has a behavioral question, they're like, my horse bites me. What do I do? There are 3 people that are like consistently like, check out Jill's resource page and like just promoting my website for me, which is like
that's really cool.
the best ever. And yeah, so I mean, like I think it's just like having that community that like wants to be helpful and positive. And like a lot of what can happen on social media is that like, oh, you're bad because your horse bites you. It's a reflection on your training and how awful you are, and or that your horse doesn't like you because your training's bad. And I just shouldn't
throw this in there, and it cracks me up. It's like as soon as an R plus horse does anything wrong, it's all of a sudden a problem with R plus. But I can't tell you how many traditionally trained horses, well-trained horses, by the way, bite or buck or refuse fences or anything.
Yeah, but they're just mares or they're just red.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, my positive reinforcement trained horse has the worst ground manners ever because I haven't trained them to be better. Like I haven't worked on that. So Zoe is very pushy. Yeah.
No matter what type of training method or approach you're using, you do have to actually do the training.
Right. And like, that's like with Zoe, the one thing I never really worked on with her was her ground manners. She's always been pushy. I've worked with that horse from 3 years old to now she's 10, I think, or 11. And she's so pushy on the ground. And everyone is like, this is the rudest horse ever. And I'm like, yeah, I probably should work on that.
Not only that too, you've got such a long reinforcement history for it now too, so it's gonna be even harder.
And I just don't feel like working on it right now. I haven't.
As long as she stays with you, you're good.
Right. Yeah. No. And well, and the fallback is Sunny, and Sunny like birthed her, so she's also very aware. But yeah, so I mean that's something that is on my to-do list, but you know how personal horses go. So it's not always that your horses are a reflection of the training method. Sometimes it's just that you're not a very good trainer. It's not the method. And I don't think
you're just not very consistent with the training.
I knew you were gonna correct me for that. Well, not correct, but change the statement. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm a bad trainer either. I just think that my personal horses tend to get neglected, especially when Zoe, it just kind of has a take it or leave it attitude about training. Whereas anytime Azula sees me, she whinnies at me. And I'm like, wow, who am I going to pick?
I'm going to throw this in there for anybody else that has similar horses, because I know there's lots of them out there. A lot of that's coming from her learning history, whereas Azula doesn't have that.
Right.
Zoe probably still feels some conflict around people.
For sure.
And so part of her brain is screaming at her that it could be this other way. And then some of her is saying like, well, my newer learning history tells me that she's pretty awesome, but also
and I mean,
doesn't have that.
I mean, Zoe looks at me. She does not run from me. She'll walk up to me on occasion, but she's very happy for me to walk up to her and hold my hands in like little cup shapes and let her rub her eyes on my hands and let me scratch in her ears and on her forehead. And then she's done. And then she'll walk away. And I'm okay with that. She's okay with that. And like, I talked about it in a couple episodes ago where I was like, I think we just kind of did what we needed to. Yes, I know if I take the treat pouch out there, she'll be down. Like she's all about it. But she's not like begging for me to interact with her all the time. She's very content to be in the field being a horse. Azula, on the other hand, thinks she's a lap dog. And if I call her, she comes running across the field, and she just is down for whatever. Like you said, because she does not have that aversive history with me. She does with other people, presumably. But, you know.
And there's other aspects to it as well. You know, some horses are more physical than others.
Azula's also 2 and doesn't have kissing spine or arthritic hocks.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, I want to run with that comment about if you took the training pouch out there, she would come. And I know I can just hear people going like, well, yeah, you have food. Like she wants the food. Um,
Yeah.
we have to remember that from a trainer's perspective, like I teach people this all the time. There is a start of session cue and a stop of, or end of session cue that I train all my horses to do. And part of that session cue is putting my treat pouch on or training pouch on and taking it off. And I do this on purpose because I want my horses to know when we're actively doing a structured training session versus when I just want to spend time with them and we're just going to hang out. And all of their personalities and like their different, we could call it love languages, whatever, kind of come out in that just spending time with each other. Some of my horses love to be scratched on. Some just want to just sit there with me and just kind of sleep and be together. And one of my River's a good example of this. She will come and like I'll sit in her pasture and she'll just stand over me and she'll fall asleep and we'll stay that way for like an hour. And she loves that time together. We do that together. We really value that time together. However, if I were to get up, walk out, put my training pouch on, she's alert. We're doing this. We're doing our training session because I just gave her a very clear cue. It's like a green light, right? Go. Like it's time to go. It's time to work.
Right. It's not even about, I mean, like, yes, the treat and the primary food reinforcer is a huge part of it, but it's also the opportunity for enrichment. There is learning that happens. They get to use their brains, and horses are foragers. They like to explore. They like to investigate. They are very cognitive, like cerebral animals. You know, they like to think and explore and create those new neural pathways. It feels good. And so like, why not also have that when there's food available? And so, like you said, they get really like, oh, okay, we're training. And like, to me, having the treat pouch, which I'm glad you caught that because that definitely does sound like, oh, it's just for the food. But also it means there's an opportunity to earn reinforcement. Food is available all the time because the food that I'm using to train is not much higher reinforcing than the grass. It's, oh my God, I always forget this word. What is the word for wanting to work for food over not?
Oh, contra freeloading.
Thank you. Oh my God. I always think it starts with a D. And I always get comments with people being like, Jill, you're thinking of contra freeloading. I'm like, thank you. I always forget it. It's like,
the one word that I, for whatever reason, remember. I don't remember a lot of other things, but that one I do.
I'm going to have to write it down like a bunch and commit it to memory. But yeah, like it's that I would rather work for it. Like Zoe gets alfalfa in the morning and in the afternoon and would still be happy to walk away from that to come work for the alfalfa pellets. And and
I've even seen examples of this where you put loose hay on the ground and then you put hay in a hay net and they will choose the hay in the hay net over the loose hay on the ground. And that's contra freeloading. They're having to work for that reinforcer. It automatically adds value to that reinforcer because they had to put effort into it.
It's more interesting. Yeah. And
it is.
And when you don't have a whole lot of interesting things because you're a horse that lives in confinement, I mean, like that's, you take what you can get. And so, there's some arguable deprivation there at play, but
well, this is where LIMA and Humane Hierarchy come in and trying to do ethical, there is a lot. And I think people get really hung up on the treats and the clicker and they forget or they don't even realize the level of work that goes around ensuring that my horses, and like particularly how I am training, I'm thinking of, and I know you do too, and all the people I teach, I am trying to set them up for as much choice and to make it as ethical as possible. And that means that they have enrichment daily. They have forage 24/7. The food that I'm working with, they have freely available at their feet. Like there's all of these safeguards that I put into place to make sure that they are actively doing it because they want to, not because they feel like they have to.
Right. And I think it would be different if like Zoe didn't have access to alfalfa or grass or hay all day long. I mean, like I said they get alfalfa twice a day, but it's like, we have really, really, I think like 50 pounds isn't a whole lot. What is the big bales? They're like, they're really big. They're like massive, massive bales. Like one flake per se is equal to 4 regular 3-strand bale alfalfa. Like it's huge. And they get several of those flakes dispersed in the field. So they have it for like all day. And then when they start to run out, it's dinner time and then they get more. So it's not a deprivation situation, but they do get it twice a day. And
so
see,
I'm gonna,
queen of caveats.
I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna say this last thing, and then I gotta go because I hear my kids and my husband. But
I have to pee so bad.
What I wanted to say before we close out is I know I was just listening to you talk about the 24/7 forage and all that, and I said it too. And I know immediately some people will go, oh, well, I can't do that, so therefore I can't
Mm.
do it ethically or whatever. I encourage you, because I'm not going to spend the next half hour explaining how we can work around this, but I encourage you to reach out to a professional, whether it's me or somebody else or Jill or anybody. Um, there are ways to help and to work around this and do as best you can. And nobody starts off perfect, and there's no such thing as perfect either. I'm constantly working to improve my horse's living situation and how much enrichment they get. I said they get enrichment every day. That's like when we're doing good. There's definitely times where that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen. And there are things that I'm not able to do right now that I want to be able to do. Like I want to be able to offer self-selection minerals, and I can't do that right now. And so there are things that as much as I'm doing, I have free kind of choice of what I do and how I do it. I'm still limited, and it's been many, many, many years of making it to this point in small decisions on a daily basis and learning and
Right.
growing
And it
and
is
with help.
okay if you can't do
Yeah.
it all. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like, I don't have the ideal setup
Yeah.
that I want out here, and my boss doesn't have the ideal setup, and she owns this place, and we're always trying to move in a positive direction, and we're not
Yeah.
always able to meet the horses like every need. Like we want our fields to be bigger. We
Yeah.
know we don't have enough room, or we have too many horses, and we're trying to get the numbers down. We know that we don't want a like grain based diet. We want forage based, and we're working on that. But we have a bunch of different horses with different needs, and so like trying to figure out feeding, like
Yep.
it's all moving in that direction. But I think that's
Yeah.
what's important. I mean, obviously, don't give up and be like, oh, that's good enough. But like the
Yeah.
the intent and that follow up action, I think, is what matters more than necessarily the end result in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And that goes into plays really well into the whole shaping plan and the
Tying it back.
sometimes with antecedents and gatekeeping and all that. I think it's on Facebook. I see this a lot. I see it on other platforms too. But um, two sides of it, as the trainer, as the person that is going on to those forums, whatever, and trying to encourage people. Please try and make sure that your wording and everything is encouraging progress, but not saying you can't do it unless you do this kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
that's just shutting people down, because if they feel like it's not possible, or literally it's not possible to do, then they're like, well, I'm not even going to try. We're moving on. And
Right.
then from the learner's perspective, so from anybody who's trying and learning and growing, and just making progress forward, that's all we can ask for, like you said. And that's what we should be asking for, is just progress. um, Try not to let the few people that come at you with it, well, it has to be 24/7 forage or else you're unethical and blah blah blah. Try not to let them shut you down and make you feel like you can't do it. I have worked with clients horses that can't have 24/7 forage right now just due to certain situations, and we just do the best we can, and we're making progress. Other situations too, not just with forage,
Yeah.
but just keep trying, making steps forward, doing what you can, and enjoying the process and having that relationship together, and prioritizing that is like the main goal, is that relationship with your horse,
Yeah.
and just learning and growing together and making progress.
And find that community to support you when you're
Yes.
having those like, oh my god, I feel like I'm not doing enough. Have that community
Yes.
to like keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
Is super super important.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we have covered about all that we can with this 2.5 hour conversation. But if there is anything that you would like to plug, I'm gonna put all your links in the description and probably promo you before you start talking, because
Okay.
God only knows who's actually gonna listen to this in portion. But if you have anything that you'd like to leave the listeners of the EquiTheory podcast with, or anything you want to promo, shout out, go for it.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is through my website, which will be linked, but it's thewillingequine.com, and you
Mm-hmm.
can find me on all the social media platforms through that same name. And definitely don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. I do my best to respond to all DMs, and emails and such.
Jeez, you were a
And
trooper. I used to.
I, I try.
Ran out of
Now,
time.
I will put it out there that if you DM me a complicated training question, I am going to refer you to my consultation services.
Mm-hmm.
This is my business, is how I eat.
You don't
And
have to justify. I know, because I do it all the time. I'm like, I feel like I need to over justify asking you to pay me for doing my job.
yeah. Yeah, and so I mean just community, and I know my foundation course is opening right now. I don't know when this podcast goes out, but
Next
um
Tuesday.
oh, perfect. So yeah, it'll only be open for about another week when this goes out.
Okay.
So hopefully I see some of you guys in the foundation course and talk to you guys over social media, and I think that's about it. Oh, and feel free to tag me in stuff that you want to show off and any training that you're doing and
To
want to.
like and comment.
Yeah, I will like and comment. I will R plus it. We want to promote that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Adele, for joining us on the podcast. It has been a pleasure, and you have officially gotten me back into doing over 2-hour episodes. So,
Oh, great. That's I'll add that to my resume.
But alrighty, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Alrighty, guys. Wow, I am back from my pee break. It was a long one, let me tell you. Also, this episode was long. It was 2.5 hours of me chugging on my water and didn't consider the potential repercussions. But what a great episode. I hope that it was somewhat coherent. I love talking to Adele because we communicate very similarly, and it's all over the place, but we follow each other really easily. So, I don't have an issue with it, but I hope that you guys were able to follow it and glean some cool topics from it. Like I said at the beginning, we started out with a rough outline and just kind of let it flow organically. And I tend to think that those are the better episodes anyway. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please be sure to check out all of Adele's links and information and give her some positive reinforcement on the socials. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.